basketball can be a mysterious sport.
The team whose logo is in this envelope will have the first pick in the NBA draft.
Watch James. Now wanted a timeout, but too late to get it. And 5 minutes go up on the clock. Overtime here in game one.
Will Giannis win a title in a Milwaukee Bucks uniform?
It's hard for me to say that, Jay, considering how loaded the Lakers are. I don't know if you've been watching Taylor Horton Tucker over the last couple of days.
But what if those mysteries could be solved? What if those conspiracies are reality? The hoop truth is out there. Can you handle it? Welcome back. It's another week. Another week in the dead zone of the NBA. Nothing's happening. Kent Bazemore got signed by the Sacramento Kings today. You guys want to talk about that? I don't think everyone wants to talk about that. We've got other things on the docket. Nothing's happening in the NBA currently, so we're going to just do some Twitter debate stuff that we saw out there. It's going to be respectful, I promise. We'll cover that. But first, let's talk about everybody on. Dre, Nick Andre ATR on Twitter. As always, back on. Sir, how are you doing?
Doing good, man. Was sick as fuck all day, but, I'm still good, though. Not COVID related, but, we still here.
And as always, we've got, well, not as always, but it seems like it. We've had them on a couple times at this point. The Hoopers Pod, brothers, boys, happy Sunday. How you guys doing?
What's going on, guys? Glad to be here. Yep, for sure.
So we're going to talk about a debate that happened on Twitter a couple of days ago. I hate to say it, but it comes from StatMuse. Whatever you guys' feelings about that account are, they tweeted out, who would you rather have or pick one, something like that, some clickbait shit. Allen Iverson or Dwyane Wade? A lot more complicated question than people initially realized when they started talking about it on Twitter. Before we dive into that, really quickly, we want to talk about and extend prayers, some hope out to Brittany Griner. Got her sentencing in from, it's been over 100 days, closer to 200 days that she's been detained by Russian forces. She was caught with vape cartridges, which is illegal in Russia, and the sentencing is 9 years. The sentencing doesn't mean anything in the scope of things because the situation isn't about the imprisonment. From what we're seeing, Russia is leveraging for a prisoner swap, which is going to include possibly, at least what they're demanding, an arms dealer that the United States is currently holding of Russian nationality. Significantly bigger fish than Brittany Griner in the scope of keeping them detained. But Russia knows that the United States want Brittany Griner back, and they are going to make it seem as if she's going to spend 9 years in prison until the United States does something about it. Make no mistake about it, like when A$AP Rocky was locked up a couple of years back, if this was LeBron James, like someone said, this situation probably would have been resolved by now. There's no chance that this would have happened, but Brittany's been there for a long time, and it's getting worse. Dre, you're covering the WNBA more than I am. Any thoughts on the Brittany Griner situation?
Just an unfortunate situation, honestly.
Yeah.
The day that they did announce the sentencing, I was just kind of stuck the entire day, like, damn, like, what the fuck? But at the end of the day, it's not surprising. It's unfortunate, but it's not surprising considering that it is Russia. They're really strict when it comes to, like, those certain rules, especially when it deals with cannabis. So it's just an unfortunate situation for not Brittany Griner, but for her family as well. We've seen her wife on multiple interviews, talking about the whole situation, how she feels and how the rest of the family feels. So don't want to get too political, but I just hope that there could be a swap that can happen possibly soon, because at the end of the day, I mean, it's just all about getting Brittany Griner home, just getting her back to her family, and hopefully sometime soon, we can see that happen.
Hooper Pod, I think we've covered the extent of the situation, at least through our expertise. I'm sure there are podcasts out there doing this breakdown in detail. Any final thoughts you guys have on the situation before we move on?
Yeah, just, like Nick said, it's a very unfortunate situation. It's a crazy situation. I know we all heard those years, and like you said, they're trying to trade her for an arms dealer. way bigger fish than what she got caught with, and it's clearly just like a leveraging situation. So you just hope that she come home as soon as possible or whatever, and the U.S. works it out. But it just sucks to be over there as long as she has been. And even though we know it's not going to be 9 years, that when I heard the 9 years, it was like, dang, 9 years. That's what we're really doing. So yeah, hopefully she gets home soon.
Nah, for sure. Definitely an unfortunate situation, but like you say, it's not even about her. It's like the situation is much bigger than her, what Russia is looking for and why Russia is doing it. So, like I said, not to go on too long, they both Fresh and Nick covered it. Like, let's just get her home as soon as possible. And no harm done to her and whatnot, physically or mentally.
Let's open with this. There's a lot of player comparison and debates done on Twitter, and if you interact with Stan Twitter at all, you'll know that it's among the worst things that you can hope to get into on Twitter. I run from it. The old No Bucks Given Twitter account that was run by me had an exchange about
Oh
Giannis
man,
versus
go
AD
back to
in
those
the day.
tweets from like 6 months ago,
Well,
man.
it's fine. I know I'm right, but I can't believe I got suckered into that situation. But here's what we're going to say about this, okay? We're talking about two all-time greats today that have pretty clean Wikipedia pages, all things considered, compared to other former players, and are shining examples of loving the game after basketball. Wade's been on TNT, and he's done a little bit of jabbing at former players and stuff like that, but AI has been nothing but a lover of basketball in the new era since he's retired. So while we discuss these two players, whatever your preferences are, we're going to do so with respect. And in that photo that we just showed on the TV there, looks like they're buddies as well. So I don't think any of us have issues with it. I'm just pointing it out for anybody listening. We're not going to do the whole he's a bum thing during this conversation.
Right.
No, we ain't going
You know
there.
what I mean? Because he's not. None of them are. Before we do get into everything, I got a whole lot of shit prepped here. I got some slides we can throw up. I really went, a college presentation on this little thing. But I do want to know, do any of you have like an answer? I don't plan to have like a definitive answer right now. But does anyone believe one way or the other?
I definitely am Team Allen Iverson.
Sure. That makes total sense. We're going to talk about why. Dre, you got anybody that you're pulling for right now?
We had this conversation yesterday. I've been still debating on it, like either way. I mean, I don't know. It's like, you can go either way. I think it's all based on preference.
I agree.
So before about it, let's just throw up the intro slide really quick. You guys are going to see the screen before I share it. That's fine. I'm not embarrassed by it. This is going to be the prompt for today. A little Hoop Truther Hoopers crossover episode with Dwyane Wade or Allen Iverson being the primary discussion point. What we're going to do is go through basics, their physicals, their statistics, their cultural impact, because one of them definitely has a massive cultural impact. And everything that we can think of. I've got some slides with here, but I'm sure you guys who have been covering the league even longer than I have more memories, more things to bring up. So before we go to these slides, why don't we start with their physicals? Allen Iverson, 6 foot, probably 5'11", listed 6 foot, 165 pounds, and a 6'3" wingspan. So he's not tiny. He's just short. 41-inch vert, one of the biggest that we've seen from a guard. And that's reportedly, I Googled for everything, looked at a couple of sources, but there's nothing out there that has full-on measurements. Dwyane Wade is a little bit of a different beast. 6'4", 220, 6'11" wingspan, just a monster. 36-inch vert, another big vert for a guard. So we're comparing two guards today, both Hall of Famers, both very important to the game, but they are entirely different, not just in their play styles, but how they are stature-wise. So I think it's going to be an experiment in comparing players that are entirely different, and as we go through their career arcs, very different career arcs as well. So that's why we probably can't get to a full-on comparison, but they're going to be very different. The accolades we can cover as well. I've got it all written down here, and I think that's where we can start the first part of the conversation, because that's where a lot of these Twitter debates start. Allen Iverson is an 11-time All-Star, 3-time Steals champion, 1997 Rookie of the Year, 4-time scoring champion, 2-time All-Star MVP, 7-time All-NBA. That's 4 first teams, 3 second teams, 1 third team, 2001 MVP, top 75 NBA anniversary member. Led the league in minutes per game for 7 seasons of his career, which is a lot of minutes on that body, and 3 times in the top 5 of MVP voting, 1 time in the top 3. Off rip, anything that stands out to you guys, I can also send this over to you. This is one of the few things that I didn't get over to the slides, and it would have been great to have it. But Dre, any thoughts on that before I read Dwyane's accolades?
I mean, when you talk about, being a leader in minutes for 7 straight seasons, I mean, it just shows, like, the heart and gratitude of AI. Like, AI was that guy that, was going to play, like, every game was his last. So, for him to just, like, go out on the floor and just display everything that he had, it was just really a testament to how great he was.
Dwyane Wade's accolades really quick while we keep doing it. I sent it to them in the chat so they can view it. 13-time All-Stars, so that's 2 more than AI. He played more years in the career, and that includes the 2019 honorary selection where him and Dirk Nowitzki were both named All-Stars, but they were both on their last legs. Basketball Reference counts that as an All-Star selection, but I'll point that distinction out. The big one is 3-time NBA champion and a 2006 Finals MVP for Wade. If that's something that you care about in these discussions, 2010 All-Star MVP, 2009 scoring champ, top 75 team member, 3-time All-Defense, All-Second team, All-Rookie First Team 2004, 8-time All-NBA, 2 firsts, 3 seconds, and 3 thirds, 2-time top 5 MVP voting, 1 time in the top 3, still wasn't a close vote, and 2-time Skills Challenge champion, if you care about that. If that's the straw, that you were waiting to come down to balance whether it's Dwyane Wade or Allen Iverson, you hear 2-time Skills champion. That's not even listed on B-Bell Rough. I found that on Wikipedia. That's what we've got there. I can put up comparisons and things like that, but they're both, Wade especially was a lot more accomplished than I thought, even though I consumed a lot of his career. Marquette alum, for what it's worth. My dad is a professor at Marquette, and he says that as far as student athletes go, Dwyane Wade was one of the best student athletes he had in his class. So a little bit of a personal anecdote for Wade there. Accolades don't mean everything, but they mean some stuff. If you guys want to talk about anything that I specifically named, you can. If you want to talk about why you think these accolades are important or not important in these discussions, you can definitely do that too. The Hoopers, let's open up to you guys. Anything on the accolades?
It's a lot closer than you realize when it comes to accolades. Iverson having the MVP, Wade having 3 championships, 1 Finals MVP. But like I say, no, you can't take things away. But like minus those things, like it's a lot closer than I think people might realize, because they both have had great careers. Both deserve being top 75. I don't know where most people got them at, but in my opinion, 2 of the top 5 shooting guards of all time, and just their numbers are like the say, especially say going back to Iverson leading the league in minutes 7 times, like that just showed like the level of game he had, and just how tough he was, because he was also hurt a lot of those years. Like even if it was little knick-knacky sore injuries.
Yeah,
So,
I agree with all that. Like you said, the accolades are a lot closer than I thought. But they're right neck and neck there with each other with a couple of different things. Wade with more championships, obviously, in that skills challenge. That puts it over the top.
all right, so I'm going to throw up this slide next. It's got their little bios, and then we'll move on from that. Iverson's the number 1 overall pick in the 1996 draft, nicknames The Answer. 14-year career, most of it with the 76ers, and then short stints with a stacked Denver team and Memphis after closing it out in a 1 last year deal with Philly, I believe. Dwyane Wade has a similar career arc, number 5 overall pick and probably the best draft in NBA history, and could have gone a little bit higher, but not much higher than that. 16-year career, a little bit longer than AI. 13 years with Miami, so longer than one team with AI. Short stints with Chicago and Cleveland, if you remember those versions of Dwyane Wade. I'll say it again, the Rajon Rondo, Dwyane Wade, Jimmy Butler Bulls were 2 games up on the Isaiah Thomas Celtics and would have beaten him. He didn't break his thumb, but that's for another podcast. And he finishes his career in Miami, just like AI. 2 years to play with Jimmy Butler. Based off of these things, I guess let's just do a career retrospective. I don't know how long you guys have been watching. I was not born when Iverson was drafted, and Wade I watched for a decent amount, but obviously not like the beginnings of those years. I was 4 when Iverson won MVP. So in terms of Iverson, watching his career through Philly and then Denver and things like that, all three of you, if you guys have any memories, anything specific that you remember, anything that you want to touch on?
Yeah, I would say with Iverson, I just remember those teams in Philly, him never having the adequate help. Like he always got players when it was a little bit too late. Even with the finals run, they traded for Mutombo in the middle of the year. And then Mutombo, he won defensive player of the year that year, but he was a little bit older. You get an older Chris Webber, you get Keith Van Horn was his second best player for a little while. Tony Kukoc was
Eric Snow.
Eric Snow. But I thought his real opportunity of maybe trying to win was in Denver because they had so much firepower there on that Denver team. But still kind of young and people trying to figure out their way. You had a young Melo, you would have had a young J.R. Smith. Kenyon Martin was kind of their marquee player, like you say.
Young Iguodala.
Right. So I just remember Iverson, honestly, scoring machine, 4-time scoring champion, third most all time. Much better on defense than I think he got a lot of credit. Not saying he was a shutdown defender, but he played harder than I think he got a lot of credit for. So you always remember the effort that Iverson, put into the game.
I think that's something Henry Wade both got in common: the effort and the determination, and just how hard they play every night, putting their body on the line. Because I know there's a height difference, but even if you look at how they play, I know we're gonna get to that in a second. They didn't really play that differently, honestly. Like neither one of them were great long range shooters. Both of them were decent mid range shooters, especially when they got hot. But both of them trying to get to the basket and get contact. Mm-hmm. And especially when Philly brought out those blue jerseys and what that was the 2003 season. Mm-hmm. Iverson and the Lakers in white had Sundays electric growing up. Right, you knew it was gonna be something. Like you knew Iverson was gonna drop 35 and he was gonna go on a 15-point run just to help his team, especially in Philly. So watching Iverson, growing up, those were special times, especially after that MVP, because you had to put a different type of respect on his name after that, regardless of how his team finished every year.
The thing with AI was, and obviously, like again, I'm saying this is stuff that I've read, stuff that I've seen. He was a phenomenon, like right away. There's documentaries about this. But also just his rookie year, breaking records, breaking like Wilt's Philadelphia records as a rookie, crossing MJ as the classic clip that's out there. And then just so much is about Allen Iverson at that point. I think there's a little bit with Dwyane Wade there too, where he's good right away as well. But AI was – they knew that you had to surround him with people right away. Not necessarily that they ever did it, but he was too good right away for them to ever get that draft pick that they were going to have to do. That's how good he was immediately. And you see it throughout his career. It's good teams, like really solid teams, fun teams on 2K for sure. Obviously, a lot of that has to do with Allen Iverson being on the team, but the Mutombo team makes it to the finals that year, the only finals that AI has gone through. Milwaukee loses in 7 in the Eastern Conference Finals. I haven't seen it. People tell me Milwaukee got fucked, but I'm from Milwaukee, and Milwaukee people are going to tell me that they got fucked by the refs. So I don't know if that really happened. I just know it was a great Bucks team. Would have been cool to see them. They probably would have gotten killed by the Shaq and Kobe buzzsaw too. That's fine.
I think honestly, not to cut you off real quick, but like I'm just thinking about like early in both of the careers, and one thing I will say is that I think that D Wade might have had it a little bit harder, if you want to say that AI did, because I mean AI came in, he was the number 1 overall pick. He was the star of the show. Everyone expected a lot of greatness out of him, and I mean, I know that AI's draft class was really good. I mean, of course, you had Kobe, you had guys like who else was in that draft class? Like Marcus Camby, Ray Allen, Steve Nash, a lot of those other guys. But when you look at D Wade, coming out of that 03, like his rookie year, it was LeBron and Melo who were like the 2 best rookies, and obviously, LeBron ended up winning it. So even though D Wade was good, it was like, he had to establish himself more. Whereas AI, he already came in established as,
Yeah.
as a young rookie who was expected to be a star.
Right, yeah, and I feel you on him establishing himself because remember he came in after a big run in the Final Four. Though he had I remember the
That's true.
got against Kentucky, but LeBron and Melo were so huge. He was underrated, and even Chris Bosh came in.
That's true.
So he definitely was the lesser talked about one out of them. And then, I mean, even the phenomenon that was supposed to be Darko Milicic. I can remember everyone wondering what he was going to be. So Wade definitely was looked over as a rookie.
It's kind of like, not that they're going to be the same players, but I love to draw comparisons to stuff that I see are familiar. It's a little bit like Jaden Ivey falling to 5 in this year's draft class. Easily the best guard in the class, one of the best players in the draft. Could end up being top 3, top 2, but everyone wanted the big forwards and the big players in that thing. We'll see what happens with Ivey there, but it's fun to see how it depends on team needs when you see it go down. In a redraft, probably goes 2, 3, but not much more than that. And at the time, they wanted big guys like Melo and Bosh instead. Who knows if they changed their mind with that? With Wade, I've got a couple of things here that we can also mention. Second to MJ in career blocks by a guard, 885. Only 2 guards that are above 800 blocks. I think he was the young. There was something here with blocks that I had. I must have lost it. It was something with the youngest guard to have. Yeah, first player 6 foot or shorter, 6'2" or shorter to have 100 blocks in the season. Just overcame a lot of size adversity for him. 1,098 is the most career dunks by a guard. I found that in a few different sources, so I think that's verified. And just a couple of things like that. AIs, we mentioned his rookie year, only rookie to score 40 points more in 5 games in a row. Third most 50-point playoff games. Second highest playoff average of 29.7. Second youngest player in NBA history to score 50. I think some of these might be a little outdated, but a lot of these are scoring. 9 players since 1996 have had a game with 24 plus points and 4 plus steals in the first half, and AI did it 5 times more than anyone else on that list. A ton of things here. Let's go with their franchise things. AI is the 76ers leader in 3-point makes, 3-point attempts, turnovers, and steals per game. You can't knock him on anything like that. Any franchise that has Wilt is going to have Wilt records in the books there that you're not going to be able to beat. Dwyane, though, had the benefit of being on a team that, when they won that title in 2006, was the first title they had had. Usually when you win your first title, that's just the best team in franchise history, and a lot of records are broken. We mentioned 13 years with the Heat. He's the Heat leader, best Heat player in history, no doubt about it. Heat leader in games played, minutes played, field goals made, field goal attempts, free throws made, free throw attempts, assists, steals, turnovers, fouls, offensive win shares, defensive win shares, VORP, all of that shit. He's just leading that franchise in everything. Obviously, you might do this is kind of like a Kyle Lowry, Kawhi Leonard kind of thing. LeBron's probably the best player that's played for them. He was there for 3 seasons. He's not going to have any of the records. And then you got the history with Tim Hardaway Jr. and Alonzo Moore and things like that. But Wade's just the best Heat of all time. I don't really know. Where do you guys want to take the conversation? Dre, anything that's coming to your mind with this stuff? Or either you guys, I'm just throwing out stats.
So let's talk about their offensive game because John kind of pointed it out, though. Both of them weren't really the best shooters per se. But the one thing that I will say is that if we're going off as far as scoring, I think that AI kind of gets that edge because AI wasn't the best shooter, but AI did have a decent mid-range. He was able to get to the basket. Was pretty. I'm not gonna say he was great from 3-point range, but he was pretty decent to say the least, as far as from what I remember.
Everyone D-Wade was a great. Everyone in those days has a terrible 3-point percentage. Unless you're a 3-point sniper like a Peja Stojakovic or something like that, everyone that was a volume shooter in those days has a 32% 3-point percentage. It just happens. Beyond Reggie Miller, there wasn't a volume 3-point shooter in the league that was an actual scorer. So AI, Kobe, even Wade, just terrible 3-point percentages. I don't know if we can necessarily put it against them in this conversation. Sorry to interrupt. You go ahead.
No, that's a fact. I mean, Wade was a decent mid-range scorer. I definitely would say that. And then, of course, he had the more athleticism. But if I had to go as far as offensive package, I would probably say AI kind of gets that nod. Him being a 4-time scoring champ throughout his career. So that's kind of the reason why I give to AI. What do you guys think?
Definitely think offensively. I'm not gonna lie. Only thing I'm giving Wade is defensively because he got gifts that Iverson don't have. Offensively, um, the 26 points per game for his career, the scoring titles, the 40-point games. Iverson was just a menace in so many ways offensively. Obviously, like I said, volume scorers didn't really have a 3-point percentage at the time, but getting in the paint in a game that was played by big so much. I mean, this is the era of Tim Duncan, Shaq, Garnett,
Right.
Dirk. It's a lot of bigs, and Iverson lived in the paint. So those big scoring numbers were easy that he used to pull up. So I'm definitely going for Iverson on the edge. Scoring.
Right. And I'm not even going to make a pick, like I said, because offensively they games were similar. Iverson clearly the more explosive scorer.
Yeah, that's
Wade could do some things. Wade the better post player.
definitely.
But I always felt like Iverson gets a bad rep as far as efficiency go because, as Fresh just said, he was living in the paint in an era where big man down there like Dave Robinson and Tim Duncan for the Spurs,
Yeah.
Horace Grant and Shaq for the Lakers, just like that. So it's like when you're a smaller scorer and your thing is I'm gonna get to the rim or just wherever you're shooting at, it's gonna be tough shots, not because you want to shoot tough shots, but it's like 6'2" point guard guarding me, like I still can't shoot over him because he's listed at 6 feet, but he's probably closer to 5'10", 5'11". So that's one thing I always felt like Iverson got a bad rep for because God didn't make him 6'4", like he's 5'10". He's gonna have a tough time shooting over the average NBA player. But even with that, like 26 for his career, 4 scoring titles, which keeps ties him for third all time. So it's like just to see that goes to show what kind of offensive player Iverson was. And Wade never had the the offensive scoring numbers that Iverson did, but Wade was electric every other night, from dunking on Jermaine O'Neal, putting out Charlotte in his first as a rookie off, taking on the scoring load, game winning shots. So like I said, it goes back to which one you want and just what your preference is.
Yeah, 100% with that. Like you mentioned, AI's MVP year, 2001, he gets 93 of the first place votes. Shaq and Tim Duncan combined for 25. So they're still in the fight there, you know what I mean? But that's how much better he was in 2001. I can give you all the stats real quick if you want them. 31.1 points per game, 3.8 rebounds per game, 4.6 assists per game, 2.5 steals per game. Just crazy numbers there. First and only finals for AI that year. Indiana in the first round, they beat them 3-1. Toronto in the second round, they beat them in 7. Milwaukee in the Eastern Conference Finals, we mentioned 7. And then the Lakers. This is a big thing that we have to talk about as well, I think, with Wade having a finals MVP and a title, but at the same time, it's the competition that you have in those finals. Love that Dallas team. I'm so glad that Dirk has a ring, and they were they later on they have it, but it's clear that that team wasn't ready for a thing. Wade dominated them in those finals in 2006, easily the best player on either team. Dirk's not really doing as much, and Shaq is playing well, but I'm not sure it was like necessarily two superstars on the same team at that point. With AI, I mean, here's what we can do, and this means nothing. This doesn't have to determine anything for your means, but this is an argument for Iverson. Do the Shaq and Wade Heat beat the Shaq and Kobe Lakers? No, right?
No.
No.
Nah,
No.
not a chance.
And I'm not sure Dwyane would average 35 on them like AI did. It's on bad efficiency, but AI does average 35 when they lose in 5 in that series. So that's the whole thing. You have to. Who knows what happens if you don't run into an actual dynasty? The AI probably has a ring. The Marcus Gasol Grizzlies probably have a ring without dynasties being around. It just happens with the part of NBA history that you're in. 2006 was a weird year. Dirk makes it through, and the Heat kind of randomly make it through after trading for a big player in the preceding offseason.
I wouldn't say it was a weird year, honestly. I mean, I'm trying to look back at those teams. I mean, Phoenix, they were running the 7 seconds or less. Detroit was still up there as far as the top team. There was a few other squads as well I could think of, but there was still some like really good contenders out there.
Yeah.
Yeah, in Miami, they had a good team overall, but they clearly was running out of gas in the finals. And Wade,
Mm.
it's like you said, he had a good finals overall, but I think what we all really remember are those last what they were down 2-1.
Yeah,
So you remember those three games where he's 37 a game and he really just took over offensively, defensively,
Mhm.
like how he was getting to the free throw line. It was just nobody on Dallas that could guard him. And then he had good veteran leadership with him. So I feel like that was a solid year. I do think Miami had the better team overall just because of the veterans that
Right.
they had with them. But I think Dallas was the favorite. Dallas looked like they were going to win. Wade, like he really did put in an all-time performance. I know I saw people talking about like how he went to the line a lot and the refs gave them the game kind of, but it was just because of the attack mode that he was in. Like he was
Yeah.
going to the
Yeah.
basket. They couldn't do nothing about it, but foul him. So
Right. I can give you those stats really quick. So that year, 2006, here are his averages during the regular season, during the playoffs, and then the finals. Averages for the regular season for Wade in 2006 is 27.2 points, 5.7 rebounds, 6.7 assists. In the playoffs, he bumps it up to 28.4 points, 5.9 rebounds, 5.7 assists, little dip there, and 2.2 assists while adding 1.1 blocks a game. And then in the finals, he bumps it up even more to 34.7 points per game, 7.8 rebounds, 3.8 assists, 2.7 steals, one block. And like you mentioned, 16.2 free throw attempts per game, making 12.5 of them. That's 12 a game, nearly 13 from the line against that series. If that happens today, people are yelling at him like they are at Luca and Harden for that shit. But back in the day, that
foul.
was just good old points, man. I mean,
Yeah.
Dre, you guys, I mean, you heard that. What do you think about those stats? I was just reading off. He jumps up 7 points from the regular season to the finals in there.
I mean, D was the guy that it's funny too because some people will have these conversations and whatnot. They'll say like, "Oh, D Wade, he has Shaq," and like you can't say that as if like that was Lakers Shaq where he was averaging like 30 and 15 or whatnot. Like what I'm saying? I mean,
Yeah.
I'm not saying Shaq was bad, but it was clearly an older Shaq who was past his prime around that time. So it's like when you look at the dynamic of the team, D Wade was really the heartbeat of the team. D Wade was the guy that really made that team go. So without his impact, like that team clearly does not win a title. So I just hate those debates where it's like, D Wade was playing with this guy or that guy during that 06 season, like, just trying to downgrade, what, like how special he really was.
Yeah, and Wade was there. He was like undisputedly their best player. I feel like they had a solid team just because of the veterans that they were there and they all were able to mesh well together. Jason Williams, Gary Payton, was Posey on that team. So they
Posey was
had
on that team.
Walker. The veterans was there because obviously none of them could play 30 minutes anymore. So they could swap it out with each other. And like you said, Shaq, when he first got to Miami, his first year, I believe, was his last like time he was in MVP conversation. He got worse every year. Not that he was bad, but he wasn't like you said. He wasn't like
he wasn't.
So Wade really had to take it up another level to win that championship. So I do think they had a really good team, but Wade was by far the best player on that team.
No, yeah, I definitely agree with that. What Wade did, like you said, that's what you're supposed to do. That's what you expect players, but as superstar players to do.
Yeah.
Like say, even Iverson averaging 31 in the regular season and going up to 35 in the finals. When you're that guy on your team, that's what you're expected to do. And like you say, 12 free throws a night shows like I would be aggressive. I'm being that guy. Nobody can stop me. And then, like you say, 37 on top of that every night attacking. Way he played, I don't think people realize that. I know the Dallas guards weren't the best that year, but Josh Howard was an all-star. Marquise Dane looking like they got a lot.
Jason Terry was a good player.
Cuban felt really comfortable getting rid of Steve Nash because he liked Marquise Dane. But I don't think people remember that.
Yeah,
but
Marquise
that was a big part of letting Steve Nash go because he did like Marquise Dane as a big guard. So these are big players, 6'8", 6'6", and they couldn't stop Wade to the basket, and that's even with Eric Dampier having a series on par with Shaq that year.
I agree with that. But I gotta put some stock in Iverson, even though they lost. I played basketball for a while, but I can biasly really say his 2001 finals loss is what really made me love the game. Like
Yeah.
just how he wasn't afraid to take on Shaq and Kobe. Like I think about that game one daily. If he scored 48 points to beat them, and how he just was determined to win that game, and what a lot of people might don't remember, they should have won game 2 also, but they pulled it
I
out in the
agree.
end. Kobe made some big shots. I think it went to overtime, but Philly would have, whatever. They could have been up 2-0, but he really tried to put the team on his back. But Shaq was fucking Shaq at
Yeah.
that time.
Yeah. Yeah, I have gone back. I have watched game 1 of that series. I have seen both Shaq
Yeah, that's the
and
thing.
AI.
Like people need to go back and actually watch that game because I mean, like the one thing that everyone remembers is obviously the AI step over on Ty Lue, but a lot of people really don't understand, you know, how he was really getting those points, you know, attack basket, you know, working around the mid range, so on.
Yeah, I've tried to go back. You can find a decent amount of them on YouTube, although the NBA does purge them off YouTube every once in a while, so it's kind of catch and hit. But for your stats for the for Iverson in the finals, 35.6 points per game, 5.6 rebounds, 3.8 assists, 1.8 steals per game. Everything goes up except for assists from the regular season, mainly because he has to score more points a game. And I'm assuming the guys weren't hitting as many shots when they were being guarded by the Lakers when they were passing it. So, yeah, he gutted it out. I don't know. Would have been cool to see him in a finals with someone else, and we can talk about the other. Well, this is what happens, I guess. Let's talk about this part of the discussion because this has to come up. At this point, we're at the sort of similar things. 2006, Wade's got his first FM Finals MVP. AI actually has the most points per game he's had in a bad year with Philly. 2006 is his last full season. After that, he spends a couple of months and then is traded to the Nuggets at the deadline or a little bit earlier. Averages 33 points per game, 7.4 assists, 1.9 steals, mainly because the roster is pretty much gone at that point. He's a young Iguodala, but that's pretty much it for notables. They go 38 and 44, and they miss the playoffs. Tied for 10th in MVP voting, which means nothing, but 43.1 minutes per game that year is really fucking ridiculous from what we have. They didn't do anything that year, and obviously he was moved shortly after that. But this is sort of what we need to talk about. Dwyane Wade won his title, and he had a couple of years where he was a legit GP candidate. You know, there were years before LeBron's
09.
full ascension where they were discussing LeBron versus Dwyane Wade, and when Kobe was getting a little older, they were asking about Kobe versus Dwyane Wade. And there was a lot of comparisons between Wade because of the Shaq trade, but then the super team happens. The first mega super team that we ever see, and that was a lot of Wade's doing, mainly because they went to Miami. AI doesn't necessarily avoid a super team. He gets traded to something that resembles a lot of talent on one team, but he didn't join people that had won titles. You know, he didn't go and join KG in Minnesota. He didn't go and join Tim Duncan in San Antonio. I don't know how viable those types of things would have been, but he didn't do that. He got traded to Denver, who had a really fun team. You've got young J.R. Smith, young Melo, and you've got like legit, you know, like 25-point game, a season Melo, mid-range killer Melo, pre-New York Melo. You got Kenyon Martin, old Marcus Camby, who does a pretty good job for them. I think they got an Andre Miller off the bench, things like that. And really, really fun team. One of the best teams ever to play with on 2K, which doesn't mean anything in terms of this conversation. But if you haven't had a chance to play with that team on 2K and you're a 2K person, highly recommend it. Dre, you remember those teams at all? Because I think that's before my time and watching the NBA.
I do, honestly. It was honestly a big debate. Though. I remember, I think it was like middle of the season when AI got traded to Denver, and then all the conversations were about AI and Melo. Were those two going to be able to fit? Going to be able to fit with one another? And I'll be honest, just like reminiscing on those old games. AI and Melo. I don't think they had a problem coexisting on the floor, but the Nuggets weren't really in a position to where they could really compete for a title. Because you gotta remember around this time, Dallas was still around. I think around the same time as well, the Lakers had just traded Pau Gasol as well. So The Lakers were back out there as title contenders, and then of course you had other teams as well. So I want to say like 2007, the year that AI was traded, they won 50 games on the year, but they were the 8th seed, which is crazy, just to really show like how good the West really was. So, they were. I mean, obviously, AI and Melo, they were able to coexist on the floor, but unfortunately, that team just wasn't really that good to really make anything happen in the West.
What we were covering there was that the difference with the career arcs, AI is good right away, good for a long time. He's moved to another team that has a lot of talent on it, probably the most talent he's ever had on a roster, but not necessarily a super team. Wade creates the super team, the Heatles in Miami, and what people don't, I feel like it isn't understood enough. Everyone calls it the super team because it is Bosch, who is an all-star, and he's brought in LeBron, who is the top 5 player in the league. But what really made it an all-star wasn't that it was 3 all-stars on the same team that got together. It was 2 MVP candidates. Dwyane Wade was a legit top 5 to top 8 MVP candidate for several years there. And for him and LeBron to get together was 2 top 5 players on the same team. That's what made it a super team more than 3 all-stars or anything like that. And AI, while he plays with Melo, he plays with Mutombo, never plays with a guy that could also be considered a top 5 player in the league, unless I'm missing something. That's the difference in their career arcs there. Because Wade sacrifices a lot more. Who knows if AI would have been interested in doing that. He didn't go and, not that he ever had a chance, but he didn't go join KG or Duncan, anything like that. He was doing his own thing, and then he got moved to Denver.
Yo. Hey, not to cut you off, but like imagine an AI KG duo.
Well, there's a lot of those. I mean, KG almost
God.
went to the Lakers. There's what
That's
if
true.
KG was with this elite guard almost every week conversation, ends up Boston, but he almost went to the Lakers. Everyone says that. Yeah, AI KG would be a top 5 duo all time, something like that. I don't know. I mean, you'd hope
I think
so,
they win a
right?
few championships. That's just my opinion.
I think they at least
I
get.
mean,
they get at least one, like on top, but I think they can get a few though.
I agree.
it depends. I mean, if he joined him in Minnesota, who knows how Minnesota would have built that team?
It depends on where they go.
But yeah,
Iverson in Minnesota.
so that's how it changes. Wade has 3 more titles than AI, and 2 of those you can see why he would have an opportunity. It's not like AI had built a super team and failed. It wasn't a Brooklyn Nets type of situation. It was always his own team, and wasn't able to do it in the one year that they did do it. They ran into what's widely regarded as one of the top 5 teams of all time in the middle of their dynastic run, their three-peat that only like 3 other teams have done. So you can't really blame him for that. Let's see if I've got anything else on here. I've got their best seasons that I can do. We can talk about just a smidge more, I guess. There's not a ton to cover, but we covered AI's 2001 and his 2006. Wade's 2006 is his finals MVP, 27.2 points per game, 5.7 rebounds, 6.7 assists, 1.9 steals. Not like world-blowing numbers, but the final stats at the bottom there are. 2009 is probably Wade's best season, even though the playoff success isn't necessarily there. 30.2 points per game, his only season above 30 points, although he hovers to the 27, 28 mark a number of times. Only won over 30 points, 5 rebounds, 7.5 assists, 2.2 steals per game, 1.3 blocks per game. An MVP winner in many seasons if you're not in a prime LeBron situation, which is what Wade found himself in. He's third in MVP voting that year behind LeBron and Kobe, and LeBron's got like 98% of the vote there or something. Probably should have been one of those years that LeBron should have broken the unanimous seal and didn't, but regardless, that's how that should have out. The Heat aren't that good, 43 and 39, number 5 seed. Heat are always dangerous no matter what the seed they are. As long as Pat Riley's been in town, that's just the case. 4 and 3 against the Joe Johnson, Josh Smith, Al Horford Hawks. Really fun team. And then he averages 29.1 points, 5 rebounds, 5.3 assists, 1.6 blocks per game in that series. You actually see his numbers go down just a little bit based off of that. Maybe the Hawks gave him some trouble. Maybe he had been carrying the load the entire season that he couldn't gut it out at the end there. but that's his best season easily. I think based off of all of that, would have been awesome to add a MVP to his accolades there. Maybe would have had an MVP if he had never teamed up with anyone. They give legacy MVPs to people all the time like that.
True.
But after that, it's time for him to win. A couple of seasons later is when he adds it. I mean, his peak isn't the same as AI's peak, but the conversation when it was brought up initially, AI versus Dwayne Wade, my first thought was that it was incredibly disrespectful to Allen Iverson to make that comparison. But looking at it more, the reason that we underrate Wade so much is because of those super teams, and he's in the smack dab of his prime, and they win titles. It's like not giving credit as much to some of the Warriors players for those KD years. But the reality is, it's not that Wade couldn't win on his own and he joined a super team and won a title and did that. Wade's got that finals MVP. He won a title as the best player on the court, and he
But
has an MVP caliber season. That's something
here's the
that
thing,
people
like,
go.
sorry not to cut you off, but I mean,
No,
I kind of want to make a mention here though. Like, I know a lot of people bring up the super team, LeBron, Chris Bosh, and the rest of those guys. They end up having guys like Ray Allen as well. But people also got to understand that around that time, LeBron needed to play with D Wade, which is part of the reason why he went to Miami. Because
yeah.
before that, I mean, like LeBron was having a hard time, getting past the Celtics around that time. With that Cleveland team. That Cleveland team, I mean, I want to say they did have like the best record that year, but like they had guys like Mo Williams, and Judas Orgalskis, and all those guys, so they weren't really contenders like we thought of them to be. So around that time frame, it was like LeBron needed to play with a guy like D Wade who already had that championship experience and understood what it took to win at a high level.
Yeah, that's
No,
fair.
I don't disagree with that.
Definitely figure out how to get to the finals at that point. Or at least, he had been to one finals, trying to get back. One finals.
My thing with that is that I don't disagree. I think that's correct. That's the correct take. But what we see, I think, narrative wise, like how people talk about these conversations is that from my impression, those 3 years that LeBron is in Miami, it's very, the Heat get a lot of bandwagon fans. There are Heat fans out there. They have a pretty rich fandom. Their Twitter presence isn't awesome, but neither are the Bucks. I'm going to be fully honest with you. But they have a rich fandom because they have had some good teams in the past that had things. But obviously, a lot of people flocked to the Miami Heat when LeBron did, and that's sort of the beginning of standom in the NBA with people pining for separate players as opposed to teams. And when he left, people left to go to LeBron. But when people bring up Miami, they still go yeah, LeBron, the guy that won the titles, in Miami with the super team. It was a super team, and he was the best player. He's not a top 5 player in the league like Dwayne Wade was. He's a top 2 player all time. So people always just attribute it to LeBron, even though it was the super team, unless they're directly trying to take credit away from LeBron, which a lot of people do. And it sort of discredits Dwayne Wade's impact on those teams. At least that's what I see in the conversations that are had about this discussion. But that's the correct take, is that Wade had been there before and Braun hadn't. And I think that's why Miami was the place to go instead of them teaming up in a third location, all of them going together, because I believe Wade was a free agent at the same time too. So that's just how it went down. Miami built that sort of credibility as a place that makes it, and they did, and they continue to do so. I mean, they've had that reputation since before LeBron, and how they do with the Jimmy Butler, and we'll see what happens with potential trades. I still think that they're going to be one of those guys that either get not cheap, but sneak at Don Mitchell or sneak at Sexton right now. I can just see that happening. Matt Riley's cooking up war crimes on the trade machine.
Right. All right. So here's a question I want to ask you guys. I know that we brought up, the Laker team against, D Wade's 2016. What about this LeBron D Wade team? Do they have a shot against that Shaq and Kobe Lakers?
I mean, it doesn't really do anything for our conversation, but yeah, probably.
Yeah, I definitely think the Heatles have a better shot, especially the second championship team.
They still don't have anyone for Shaq. I mean, Bosh isn't guarding him.
That's true.
So that's a big deal.
At all.
So that's a big deal. I don't think they ever really, because I mean, I guess they had some difficulties with Tim Duncan. So if you extrapolate that to the difference in what Shaq could do, that's the question with every conversation. That's the reason that three-peat team that didn't do like a ton. They had the fourth finals appearance, but beyond that, compared to other dynasties that had like 5 or 6 years where they were like very close to winning the title, as opposed to the 3 to 4 that the Lakers do, is because every time you bring up that team versus that team, it's like, well, do they have someone for Shaq? If no, they have an equal chance. At worst, they have an equal chance of beating you. I think, regardless of the team they're going up against, if you got no one for Shaq, they have an equal chance.
Probably going home. Yeah,
Yeah.
I agree.
I'm going to close it off. Here are the career highs that I've got for these guys, and after that, we'll just go on. If we want to talk about the difference in their shoes, we can talk about that, or anything else you guys want to, we can. But Iverson, this is his stat line for career highs. Obviously, not in the same game, just the highs during the regular season. 60 points, 16 assists, 11 rebounds, 9 steals. His playoff career highs are 55 points, 16 assists, 9 rebounds, 10 steals. I think that's the playoff record, is 10 steals in a game, owned by Allen Iverson. Career highs for Wade are 55 points, 16 assists, 16 rebounds, 8 steals, 5 blocks. Playoff highs in different games are 46 points, 15 assists, 13 rebounds, 6 assists, 5 blocks. It's really close stuff. I can throw this up as well, actually, if you guys want to take a closer look at that, just to be able to see it more than just hear it. Pretty similar stuff there in terms of what they did in singular games. Obviously, the block stuff is different for Wade. That's his big advantage there. Even though the scoring highs and the averages for Iverson are higher, the highs for Wade aren't far off. Iverson is more of an offensive engine. I don't think you could have ever designed an offense around Wade, at least entirely around Wade. But that's the big difference, is that Iverson has, Trae Young has that more, like, you can run an entire offense with him and you can do everything surrounding him. Iverson could do that. I'm not sure Wade could necessarily do that, but the dude was putting up number one option scoring stuff for a lot of these things. That's pretty much what I've got. If you guys want to compare Reebok to Li-Ning, we can do that. But any final thoughts from you guys? Dre, are you convinced you have one or the other?
It's hard. I will say it's tough. If I had to choose between the two, I'm gonna go AI.
I think it's hard to choose against a guy that could score just enough points that you could win any game that you're put into, just have a chance with. Hoopers, any final thoughts on AI? I'm assuming you guys are sticking with it. If you don't have a choice, that's more than fine. I'm totally happy to have a choice.
I think there's good arguments for Wade when you look at totality of careers because of the accolades that are going to be there, the championships and stuff like that. But individually, I'm taking Iverson. His shoes was better. Yeah. His cultural impact was better. and like, because I think the games are really similar. I can remember, like, being thinking about how hard Iverson played. He hit the floor a lot. I remember having a whole commercial about how many times he hit the floor. So they both play extremely hard. They both are all-time basket attackers. They're all-time paint scorers for guards. Yeah. Both have great mid-ranges. I would say they're both iffy as far as three-point shooters. But overall, I would take Iverson just with the scoring that he was going to provide. Wade is going to give you some more defense, but I think Iverson defense is severely underrated just because since his steals were just looked at as him hunting steals, opposed to him actually playing defense or whatever. And I don't really think that's the case. But I think Wade is really great, all-time great player. I think even without LeBron, he could have had an opportunity to, like, when they got Wade, they still were going to compete for the finals. Not saying they were going to win championships, but him and Wade were just starting to them compete, and LeBron just made it a guarantee they're going to the finals. So great career for Wade, but I'm taking Allen Iverson 9 times out of 10. Third best shooting guard of all time.
That's right.
But I'm an Allen Iverson fan, so you can count all that as bias. My favorite.
I can dig on that. Especially you and Nick picking Iverson. I'm not necessarily gonna make a pick, but I do want to speak on one of the last things you said about Iverson being an offensive engine.
Yeah.
Honestly, I guess I will make a pick because sometimes that's a preference, and I always think that also held Philly back of bringing another player in because Of course, Jerry Stackhouse was there when he was younger. That's another guard, a scoring guard. Doesn't necessarily work out because Jerry Stackhouse thought he was the best player in the world.
True.
They try to bring in a Chris Webber, a Iguodala, players that are more playmaker, shooter style. So
Right.
it was just Iverson being, like, say, that engine always made it so hard for them to build around him because, like, what other, especially in that time when it's like only your team is going to be one offensive scoring threat, a point guard who doesn't turn the ball over, and then a bunch of defenders and shooters. Whereas Wade, like I said, shout out to Wade, and that he accepted that role and he knew that would make the team better. But because Wade wasn't that offensive player, it was easier for him to fly back as a second option.
Right.
And that's really what made those Heat teams go, honestly. And there's nothing wrong with either or because it's all about the big picture at some point.
And well, real quick, I think honestly, Iverson being an offensive engine was a cop out for Philly to not be aggressive to get other players
100%.
out there. Because he was fine with sharing the scoring load with Melo and J.R. Smith. Obviously, the team still lacked some depth and just some maturity and things like that, but it was just like he had to take every shot, and he explained multiple times why he shot the ball the way he did. So I think Philly wasn't aggressive enough as far as getting him other players around him. They weren't really making good draft decisions, and players that they drafted, like they drafted Larry Hughes and then they let him go a year later. His second best player, like I said, was Tony Kukoc, and it was Keith Van Horn. And they got Derek Coleman, Chris Webber when he was older, still solid but older. So I think him being it was like they tried to make it seem like people didn't want to play with Iverson, but in the offseason,
I ain't saying that.
Yeah, no, I know you're not. But in the offseason, like he played with Vince Carter and these different players in the offseason. Billy King was a GM at the time. He wasn't aggressive enough. A lot of people honestly didn't want to play for Larry Brown because he had such a strict way of how he wanted to play, especially after the Olympics. I think Philly could have did more by Iverson, which we saw Pat Riley did. He was going to go get somebody. He's still doing it, as you said.
Yeah, like you mentioned, if it wasn't LeBron and Chris Bosh, Pat Riley would have found someone else to pair with Dwyane Wade. He was always going to figure it. Maybe it wouldn't have been as good of a team as that was, which would have been hard to do, but he would have found something that was better. That's how that works for Pat Riley. Like I said, I'm fully expecting him to do some shit before this season is over. The one thing that I'd mention is, and this isn't analytical shit. I don't mean to make it seem like it doesn't have to matter. I think it does matter. It's just hard to contextualize in the sense of how good a player was. But every great player in the NBA has film dedicated to them. Like if you want to improve on something, you have to watch this specific player's film. I'm sure there are a number of things in the NBA that a coach would be like, you want to improve on this specific skill? Watch Dwyane Wade. There's a difference from watching enough film to gain abilities like a singular player and worshiping a player and emulating them in their game entirely. There's a difference in that. The most famous example of this is Kobe, because people have been emulating Kobe since it's been popularized to say Kobe to throw fucking trash in the trash can. And you see it with players now. You got kids playing wearing Kobe's. You got kids saying they got the Mamba mentality, and then you guys got guys that have been career Kobe guys like DeMar DeRozan, who just landed a deal to continue the Mamba franchise and wear the new kicks in the NBA, which I fucking love. And I think AI has a lot of Iverson disciples out there, and it's not necessarily the same for Dwyane Wade. In terms of legacy, that stuff does matter, and AI definitely has the
It does.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that.
I agree.
That's going to wrap us up. There's no decision. Nobody wins except for us because you're listening.
Yeah.
If you are, if you're not. Hooper Pod, thank you guys for coming so much. If they're on the screen, if you're wanting, go follow them at Hooper's Pod as well as their individual accounts at Jonathan Dubia and Worldwide Fresh on Twitter. All of this will be tweeted out when it's posted, so you can follow them there. Anything else you guys want to plug? Anything else you guys got going on?
Yeah, just we wrapping up our summer series. We actually about to go on in like 10-15 minutes, record our last one. So that'll be coming out real soon. It'll be some familiar names on there, so that's gonna be fun. So just look out for the summer series that we dropping really, really, really soon.
Facts, like real soon. Like I said, we're gonna record. Got one more guest track today. We gonna do a little 10-minute thing for ourselves for maybe 10, 15 minutes, and then we done. So, Nick, you can stop harassing me on Twitter about it. Don't drop it, man. We working. We like rappers, man. We
Man,
build
we
it,
waiting, man. We waiting.
man. When y'all see us at the ESPYs in like 6 years with gold chains on, just know we do this like
Y'all
rappers.
taking longer than Kendrick, man.
No, about as long as current project, not a what.
Once that's out, you'll see it on our page as well. I'm sure we'll be sharing it through there.
100%.
Dre at Nick Andre ATR on Twitter. Forgotten Players 2.5 is currently in the mix. Dre, anything else you got coming out?
Yes, sir. Forgotten Players Part 2.5. The series continues Monday, so make sure to check that out. And besides that, just follow me on Twitter.
That's Nick Andre ATR again. In terms of this podcast, we are currently have something in the archives, a very long 2-hour Giannis episode where we had a couple of guys from a local Milwaukee podcast I've been on a couple times. Just discuss about his career since he was drafted up to the front, just bored during the offseason. It's literally too big for me to edit and upload, and I'm just troubleshooting how to upload it, but it'll be out there before training camp in about a month. Just keep an eye out for it. This episode will drop out pretty soon after it's recorded, likely Monday, the August 8th, and then we'll record anytime we have something come up or if we have any interest in an episode like this. You can follow me at _Lucifer on Twitter. With I don't have any other content going out right now. I have some things in the pipeline, though, a couple things I'm considering workshopping, writing down, see if there's anything that's there. I know. For the next season, I definitely want to do something more regular for writing, but there's nothing concrete right now, so just keep an eye out. Give us go like and subscribe. Hit up the YouTube. Give us 5 stars or whatever podcast thing you're on because that helps us out. If not, that's fine. I'm never going to find out if you don't do it, so you don't have to feel any guilt about it. Thanks for coming on again, boys. We'll see you next week or longer than that. Check out the Hooper Pod. Thank you for opening your third eye once again and discovering the hoop truth. Deuces.
Deuces.